So here we go, exploring artist residency opportunities. And one of the things right away, the Career Center website has a lot of really great information. So under artist resources, you can find a specific category of artist residencies. And we've got, again, lots of different links, but I want to show you some of the best directories to use. One of the best directories you can use, definitely in the United States, is the Artist Communities Alliance. This resource is just fabulous. The organization is fantastic. And what you often are going to turn to is the directory. And in the directory, you can search by lots of different ways. If you know you want to be in a specific state, you can pick a state like New York. And then in doing so, you can find all the residency opportunities in New York. And you might find a residency like the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council and have one that's more urban. Or you may find one like the Wassaic Project, and the Wassaic Project is wonderful in the residency. It's RISD founded in upstate New York, so you're in a much more rural area. And these kind of residencies, again, have to kind of fit you. Do you want an urban experience? Do you want a rural experience? There are lots of different kinds of residencies. Another thing you can do at the directory is you can search by identity, gender, resources, facilities. So you can find residencies that, again, really fit the things that you're looking for. You might find one like Kindred with a wonderful focus on BIPOC and Argo Forest. And you can also, of course, search by discipline. So if you are and definitely want and need facilities that match your discipline, you can search by that. So in this case, sculpture, and you might find Art OMI, and lots of different organizations that support your needs and your discipline. Now, I really recommend when you're at the Alliance site that you sign up for their newsletter. It's free. I also included a link for that. And with the newsletter, I think you get it each month. It gives you the deadlines for the current residencies. It also showcases a lot of new residencies, and those might be ones for you to look at and consider as well. Now, if you're looking worldwide, one of the best directories is Res Artis. One of the funny things about the site is it's always slow to load. It's the strangest site. You go to it, you put it in, and then it just spins, and you wonder, is it working? And it does work, but you do have to be patient with Res Artis. However, they have a really great mapping system. So if you know you want to look for residencies in South America, you can search by specific regions, see where the residencies are located, like Sakatar. You can also, of course, look in other parts of the world, such as Europe, search by country, and find residencies, again, in all of these different areas. There are so many special kinds of residencies that people often don't realize. There's been a terrific program with the National Park Service. You can even do the Hawaii Volcano National Park Residency, which is pretty amazing. And these residencies can even involve archaeological sites and the national park venue. Really impressive. There are residencies that have themes. So the Santa Fe Art Institute has done a wonderful array of residencies focused on themes of truth, sovereignty, food issues. It's really amazing. So if your work involves these themes, that might be a great residency experience for you. Also, individuals might want to seek residencies very concerned with nature or the environment, like Studio in the Woods. Residencies that are more digitally focused, you can find those as well. Or residencies that merge science and the environment and your work. And then there are just so many special residencies that sometimes don't even fit within a framework. The Elsewhere Studios has just got this amazing vibe to it. So again, what fits you? That's what's really important. So when you're at the site, our site on careers, you will actually find partnerships that we have. We have an array of partnerships. One of those we've had for a very long time is with Anderson Ranch. And this often happens that after you graduate or soon after you graduate, you apply for these opportunities. The Anderson Ranch one is about to open in December. This coming spring of 2026, we're actually supporting 4 RISD alumni. And the Career Center covers half the cost, and Anderson Ranch covers the other half. So this is a really great opportunity, and stay on the lookout for those emails and all that come to you. And we've had some really terrific alumni that have come through the program, like Ray. who've really benefited from these experiences. Skowhegan has their matching funds program, and we've had a really significant number of RISD alumni who've gone into Skowhegan. And once again, the Career Center covers half, and Skowhegan covers the other half in the matching funds program. And then we're really excited. We started up recently a partnership with Mass MoCA, and we have Mass MoCA here tonight. And we are currently supporting 2 residency opportunities. And you're going to learn a lot more about those tonight from Carolina. And of course, with Mass MoCA, you benefit not only from having space to do your work, but you benefit from the amazing complex of the Mass MoCA. Now, choosing a residency involves a lot of different factors. You've already been hearing about them. We've got a link, which is through the Alliance, a wonderful array of things to consider as you can think about residencies. And that can be involved in what are you looking for? What's your working style? Are you seeking community? Or do you just want to be focused in a more isolated way? What time of year do you want to do it? What kind of workspace do you need? Are you concerned about the networking that might come with the residency opportunity? Are there other resources nearby? There are many, many factors to consider. And of course, cost. Cost is always a really important factor. Once again, the Alliance has a really great page on figuring out your funding, the fees, and the fellowship. They even have a worksheet that you can use to kind of log in exactly what funding you might be gaining. So some things for you to consider: are there scholarships? Is there funding? Are there stipends involved? Is housing provided? Are meals provided? Are you in an individual space, a shared space? What are the costs for those? What kind of access to equipment? What about supports like studio techs? Are there exhibition opportunities through the residency? Is work documented? And what about alumni networks and many other factors? So there's a lot here for you to consider. And we've got links for other things to think about. It's really important when you look into a residency to do your research, know what you're getting into, and make sure that you can do it and that you're qualified to do it. You know, there are even age restrictions. At times, a lot of residencies require that you need to be 21 or older to be in the residency. You also just want to make sure it's going to be worth your effort. You might be missing work or employment when you do it, so you want to calculate all of that. Don't miss deadlines. Deadlines are extremely important. Always kind of trick yourself by making a deadline that's earlier so that you don't come right under the gun on that deadline. Really review the application closely. Make a draft, get feedback on it, show it to people, get more feedback, revise it. And especially, and this is the biggest thing, don't be discouraged by rejection. It's important to apply. There's lots of wonderful people who apply to these opportunities. There's only so many spaces, and you just have to keep applying, especially if you really believe in the residency and what it can do for your work. So keep all of that in mind, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing. And again, that was a quick overview of a lot of resources, and you got the links. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists tonight. So I hope I get the pronunciations right on names. First, I'd like to introduce Noel Sinazic. Noel is the executive director of the Carving Studio and Sculpture Center in Vermont. Then we have Carolina Horace Monroe. And Carolina is the studio managers of the studios at Mass MoCA. And then we have MJ Sankey, and MJ is the residency coordinator at the Steel Yard, right in our own backyard in Providence, Rhode Island. And we have our own Karen Harris, who is a RISD alum and also our internship manager and senior career advisor, and an amazing artist who's going to talk about her residency experience. So what I'm going to do is first turn to Noel, who's going to tell you about the Carving Studio and Sculpture Center and their residency opportunity. Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, my name's Noel. I'm the executive director at the Carving Studio. We are I call it basically, we're a sculpture center for sculpture that you can't do in your New York City apartment. So if it kicks up a ton of dust or gives off some kind of gas or there are splinters flying everywhere, we probably do it. We primarily focus on stone. We do a bunch of different stone programs: limestone, alabaster. We're primarily focused on marble because we're on the site of a marble quarry. There is some granite done, verde, all kinds of different stones. Primarily what we do is sculpture education. So we put on a series of workshops throughout the summer. They're usually week-long or weekend workshops. And people come for a week and they throw themselves typically into stone and they go nuts and then they go home at the end of the week with something really nice. Our residencies are meant to coalesce and sort of align with that kind of workshop vibe of the rest of the studio. We have two different residencies. One is an internship residency. So for those of you who are in an undergrad program, that would be for you. That is an all summer long residency. So about 3 months, June through August. Interns come, they stay with us. We provide the housing for free. There's a stipend for expenses while you're here. And we have you help out around the studio a little bit, but the key access is basically unfettered access to all of the classes and to take on your own projects over the summer. So we offer copper sculpting, when we do steel assembly, when we do limestone and alabaster, when we do marble, you have access to all of those workshops. And so it's a really great way of, especially if you're, and I guess these are all RISD students, but if your home school or institution doesn't have a sculpture program, it's a really great way to come just like get your hands dirty in sculpture. For graduated students, we also have an artist in residency program that is a 1 month long residency. Those residents also receive housing. They receive a $2,000 stipend while they're here. And what they do is they come to us with some sort of ambitious project or new way of approaching the material. So we had three artists in residence this summer. I will briefly describe all of them to give you an idea of how kind of the broad array of the people that we have come through. Kara Chan worked on, I can only describe it as a cartoon bust that had, out of marble, that had glass eyes and a bronze ski helmet. So I hope that gives you an idea of kind of like the mixed media nature of kind of what we do. I will say we don't have a glass shop, but that's something that I would love to change. Um, Taylor Baldwin, who is a professor at your organization, primarily, I believe, works in wood. I hope nobody like jumps down my throat and says that's not correct. But he came and was working in marble for the first time, and he threw himself headlong into anatomically correct arms. He spent all month working on what I can only describe as like the most beautiful stone arms I've ever seen in my life. Admittedly, the number of arms, anyway. And our last artist in residence was Daisuke Komiya, who is an artist based in New York. He had his at least current body of work is all stuff that is, we will say, reasonably sized. You know, things that are a couple of feet in any given direction. He proposed a project where he wanted to work on a 4 foot by 4 foot by 5 foot piece of stone. So for those of you not familiar with stone, that's like a 35,000 pound stone. Um, all I had to give him that was roughly that size was an 8 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot stone. So he ended up getting a roughly 80,000 pound stone that he worked to turn into a giant oblong kind of egg shape. Um, Really, really neat project. It was really fun to watch a stone carver come take that much material off of a piece of stone. Um, it was a really interesting challenge for me in terms of being the director and making sure that we had tooling that at that scale. Most people come and they take classes and they work on half a cubic foot. And so the tooling is very different. And so that was an interesting adventure for me. I think it was an interesting adventure for him, and it was a really ambitious project. So when we select those artists in residence, we're really looking for people to come to us with a project in mind that they want to take on. And that it doesn't need to be monumental. It could be I'm thinking about taking this medium and inserting it into my own craft. So both of our residencies are paid residencies. Obviously, they're different levels. The key difference between them is that the resident internship is 3 months. It is you're there to learn and take classes and kind of be a part of the community for the summer. And the artists in residence that are again, kind of graduated professional artists, they're really there to like bite something bigger than what they can chew and just see if they can do it. Um, Kevin, any other major talking points that I should get through before we?
No, I think you covered a lot really fantastically. I know I have some questions in light of what you were mentioning, but I'm going to wait till the end because
Sure.
there were definitely some really incredible things that I want to ask you about. So that's perfect, Noel. Thank you so much. And next, we're going to have MJ Sankey talk about the residency opportunities at the Steel Yard.
Hi, everybody. I'm MJ. I'm the residency coordinator at the Steelyard. I have a presentation that I'm going to share. I work at the Steelyard. The Steelyard is located here in Providence, Rhode Island, and is a nonprofit industrial arts center and shared studio that goes to support many different artists in the industrial crafts. So that is including blacksmithing, welding, jewelry, foundry, and ceramics. We're a community of artists, makers, and educators. Um, this is a picture of one of our most recent ceramics residents, Donna. And so the mission of the residency is designed to assist emerging to mid-career artists in growing and strengthening their art practice. The residency program is a very community-oriented program. I have 7 to 9 residents in my studios at any given time, and they all have the opportunity to work together and collaborate on projects, to focus in on their own practices, and to take part in community events and exhibitions and be creative leaders in our shop. The kind of most important thing that residents are given in this program is access to our studio, 24/7 access to our studio to do their work. And again, this is for artists who are working largely in the industrial craft medium, so that's ceramics and metals. Artists are given access to both working and teaching studios as well as their own space. Residents are given these locker workspaces to store all their work year round, and they are situated within our educational studios. We have 3 educational studios that are shared with our education department. So there are a lot of different classes going on in these spaces as well. So the residents are studio mates with a lot of our instructors and students, as well as kind of the stewards of our spaces. Here's another example of some of the resident storage that we have. This is our ceramic space. Our ceramic space is equipped with a bunch of wheels. We have 4 Cone 6 electric kilns, as well as a variety of atmospheric kilns. Our atmospheric kilns do go up to Cone 10. This year we had a pit firing kiln built into our back 40. So now people can do experimental firings throughout the year. This is some recent resident work coming out of the ceramic studio. Our jewelry studio houses a bunch of different jewelry equipment. We have the means to work with all kinds of non-ferrous metals here. We have enameling kilns. We have a bunch of various Dremels, a bunch of various like metal cutting tools. And some of the work coming out of our jewelry studio from recent and current residents. And then our large metal space includes welding and blacksmithing. And so our welding studio includes access to TIG and MIG welders, plasma cutters, oxyacetylene torches, and a bunch of various tools for manipulating your metal work after you've welded it. And then this is our blacksmithing studio. Our blacksmithing studio houses like 100-plus-year-old power hammer. So a lot of the equipment that you're using in the steel yard has been around for a really long time. And then some of the recent work coming from residents in metals. Other opportunities that residents get to be part of when they're in our program include being part of regular iron pour teams. We have access to foundry equipment, and 2 to 4 times a year, residents are invited to be part of this pour crew so that they can kind of learn how to do the process of an iron pour as well as pour their own work. If any of you have ever done an iron pour before, it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of effort, and so this is kind of like a big community push that we end up doing a few times a year. Our residency is free. It's free to apply and it is free to participate. Most of our residency opportunities are funded. Our year-long residents are able to receive stipends in exchange for various levels of work share and like leadership roles that they take up in the space. Residents are also able to participate in 2 different exhibition opportunities, which happen at like rotating galleries around Providence. And then we also have regular in-progress crits and sales for residents to be able to sell their work. And this is some of our current and past residents who are on this passport team in the fall. The residents do end up staying around the Steelyard after you have done your residency. A lot of the residents end up staying on as teachers, as fabricators in our public projects department. They stay on to do pours every few months, and they just generally stay involved at the Steelyard as part of our larger community. Our application for our year-long program is actually just about to open on December 1st, and will be open until the deadline on March 1st. Again, there's no application fee to apply, and these are some of the things that you need in order to complete that application. Our year-long program is open to any emerging or mid-career artists who are kind of looking to hone in any of their skills in industrial medium. Year-long residents are asked to apply either as ceramics or metals residents. And while the residents are asked to kind of focus in these areas, there's a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination throughout the program. Our year-long program is open to residents to apply for a second year. So many of our cohort members are residents who are here for 2 full years. We give this opportunity just because some people like need a little bit more time to really delve into this practice, and then some people don't want to stay for longer than a year. If you have any questions about the residency, I'm happy to answer questions, especially about our upcoming application that's opening tonight, but this is also my contact information.
Fantastic, MJ. Thank you so much. And it's just a really fabulous reminder of the interconnectedness of everything going on at the Steelyard as well, which is just incredible. Speaking of interconnectedness, the studios at Mass MoCA and the Mass MoCA are quite a draw when you're at the Mass MoCA. So our next panelist is Carolina Porce Monroe, the studio manager, and we're going to hear from Carolina.
Kevin said, I'm Carolina Porce Monroe, the studios manager at the studios at Mass MoCA. I'm also co-founder of Pinewood Atlas, which is a catalog of unconventional artist residencies. So I will talk about kind of both aspects of my work, but I will first start with the studios residency program. So the studios at Mass MoCA is located in North Adams, Massachusetts, so in the westernmost part of the state in the beautiful Berkshire Mountains. And our residency hosts artists all year round. We've been around for about 10 years now. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, actually. So since 2015, we have hosted over 1,000 artists from all over the world in different career stages and disciplines for self-directed residencies on MoCA campus. And if you've never been to Mass MoCA, I highly recommend. The Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Arts is one of the world's largest art centers dedicated to contemporary art. It's about 300,000 square feet of gallery space, and the artists in residence are provided 24/7 studio space right on the museum's campus. So they have free access to visiting the galleries when the museum is open. So they can go in as much as they want and explore and immerse themselves in the gallery space, which we highly recommend. It's like one of the best parts of our residency program because it is a massive, massive museum and it is almost impossible to see the whole thing in one day. So it's really cool that artists can be there to take breaks in the studio and just really immerse themselves in each exhibition, take it slowly. And so, so they can find inspiration amongst all the gallery spaces and go back to their studio to create work. We have artists such as Jeffrey Gibson, Sola Witt, James Turrell, Louise Bourgeois, Vincent Valdez, Laurie Anderson, and many, many more artists. And aside from the extensive gallery spaces, Mass MoCA also has a very robust performing arts program that programs many festivals throughout the year and concerts and performances. So when artists and residents are here, they are usually able to access some really amazing performances or festivals during their time. And because they're members of the museum while they're here, they usually get to access that for free. And it's just a nice way for them to also take breaks. Go see some art, see some music, and just some more information regarding the residency program specifically. The length of time for residencies is 2 or 4 week long residencies, and we host an artist at a time. So we have about 12 sessions per year. So we host 120 artists a year. We're very much a cohort-based residency in the way that all 10 artists arrive on the same day and they leave on the same day. And I'll talk a little bit more about the events that we put together too, just as a way to build that relationship, because like Kevin was saying, that's also one of just the great benefits of attending residencies is also meeting your peers, the people around you, if that is what you're looking for. Just show some images. So we do offer 24 studio access and there's some equipment available. So we have a print shop and we do offer a free print tutorial for artists who are interested in using our shop. So for those who also just want to learn and experiment with a new medium, they're welcome to come and learn. We also have some looms that folks are able to use, and all of the studios are different, slightly different sizes, but we do generally work better for artists who are visual, could work two-dimensionally, writers, and of course we've had all different types of artists be in residence, but because due to the shared walls, we aren't able to host super loud mediums like musicians or people that need to make a lot of noise. And just to talk a little bit about our applications, we have several ways of applying. We do have a partnership with RISD where once a year we specifically offer university fellowships through our general apps. And with one of those deadlines, RISD, BFA, or MFA students with an upcoming graduation date are eligible for a free residency, and that's a 2 or 4 week residency, and they are provided all of these things that I've mentioned. We also provide a daily lunch, so people don't have to worry about at least one meal during their stay, and we have a big welcome dinner on night. And that's previous slide with different chances to share your work. We program optional events during the residency, and that will include artist presentations where artists can share their work with their peers, as well as curator visits. So that's either with a Mass MoCA curator or a curator from a nearby arts institution. And for folks who are here for 4 weeks, we'll program studio. Right now it's free to apply, and I would suggest the general app for those financial aid and fellowship considerations. And then we also have something called the early app, which is further in advance and is for folks who have, who may have funding through their university, if they're a professor, or they have professional development money through a grant. So that one is less competitive and people do have to pay. And then the general app is pretty competitive and more competitive. And that is where most people apply through, because for the most part, if people are getting accepted through the general app, they will attend for free and sometimes even stipends, depending on what type of fellowship they have. We have a pretty robust jury and artist selection process. So for example, in our latest application rounds, we received over 900 applications, 30 residency slots. So it is quite competitive, and we pay outside jurors, whether that's artist curators or artists who have gone through their program or just other arts folks to review all the applications. So generally we'd have around like 18 people, and every application gets viewed by multiple people, and we have different rounds. So if you guys want any more information, happy to answer during the Q&A or my emails there. We have a lot of information on our website, massmocha.org/studios. We have a video of the apartments, which I didn't touch on. We also offer housing, which is right across the street from the museum, so super convenient. And I'll talk about Pinewood Atlas, which is my collaborative project, independent, not through a job or anything. It's just me and my best friend collaborator who go on regional trips across the United States and visit artist residencies and make books about it. So we focus on DIY and unconventional artist residency spaces, which means many different things. We love the database. All the websites that Kevin mentioned are really great resources. That's how I found out about my first artist residency. And then we also value word of mouth as a way of hearing about residencies, because your friend can tell you, oh my gosh, it was like this, meet all these people, they had great food. There's just nothing like hearing it from a friend. And we wanted to bridge that gap of being a database, which has a lot of useful information, but you don't really get that firsthand experience, such as your friend telling you who had gone to the residency. So me and my collaborator, Alicia, told you we actually met at a residency, Elsewhere Studios, which you mentioned in your intro. And we had just recently graduated with our BFAs, and we're just in a really formative time in our lives. And we both happened to find Elsewhere in different ways. She found out about it through word of mouth. I found out about it through a database. So that's kind of how we came up with this idea. And we also had a love for road trips. So visiting the residency spaces is a really important aspect of our project, because we want to be your well-informed friend. We want to actually go visit the spaces. We spend a night or two. Sometimes we're only able to be there for an afternoon, and we interview the artists, we interview the facilitators, we take photos, we record everything. And then when we go back home, we translate this information into a guidebook, which acts as a resource. It acts as an archive also, because a lot of these spaces being DIY, sometimes they're just in a home, like it's just a family who has an extra bedroom and they offer it to artists. They may only last 5 years, and so they may not exist anymore, but we were able to capture them in that moment and have a snapshot of the residency field. So we've been doing this since 2016. So it's almost been 10 years now. And this is just our criteria for the residency spaces we go visit. So in some way, them being small, emerging, or unconventional, open call format, not invitation, free, or if they have to charge, it's no more than $1,000 a month. Bonus points if they give artists a stipend, extra bonus points if they're focused on environmental, social, racial justice, equity, and they must also offer studio and housing. There are a lot of studio-based residencies that may not offer housing, but we focus on so yeah, we have visited 5 different regions, actually, yeah, 5 different regions at this point, around 75 residencies. We've published 5 books now and are working on our 6th one. And something that's really important to us is also the journey to the residency. So in our books, we have tips from the road, how to get to the residencies if you don't have a car, stops to make, also contributions and conversations from artists and facilitators on various topics. And I'm just going to fly through these different residency models because Kevin already kind of covered that information. So yeah, if you're interested in some unconventional residencies, follow us on Instagram. We post all about them online and on our website. And yeah, just wanted to give them a shout out because sometimes they don't end up on the databases because you have to pay money to be on the databases. And some of these are, they're very small budgets. So that's why we kind of also shout them out. So thank you.
Carolina, thank you so much for offering both those insights. I find it kind of fascinating that both the Mass MoCA residency opportunity and Piney Woods Atlas are both at a 10-year mark. So in terms of your own involvement in residencies, it's fascinating that both are these 10-year blocks that you're connected to. I just find that very cool. So, and now we're going to turn over to Karen Harris. And what's really great is we want to hear an artist perspective, what the residency meant to them, and then also how they balance the residency with their life work and other things that they're doing. So over to you, Karen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. So I always try to figure out how to start this conversation about being an artist and also being somebody that works full time all year long, and then trying to find space and time to do my work. So I always talk to people and talk about being a closeted artist or a basement dweller that, which it took a while being that kind of person. And then it took a while to kind of like go out there and actually apply. So it's really nice to hear these residencies talk about how approachable applying to a residency is, because I kind of had to get over myself to do that and actually just take a chance and just do it. My first residency at iPark was only a 2 weeks residency, and it was an invitation, and it was through going to a gallery opening in Newport. So going to any kind of museums or gallery opening and networking, talking to people. And when I told them what I did and that I was a closet artist, they thought about like inviting an artist who hasn't done a residency before, but has been doing their own personal work, to invite them into a situation. So they invited me for a 2 weeks residency. And then I applied and got into a month's residency after the next year. So iPark is actually in East Haddam, Connecticut, and it is like a 400-acre kind of like nature kind of place. It's not a park, but it's in like sacred land for Native American. Um, you have your own studio. They have a chef that cooks all week, and that's about maybe 6 to 8 residents there. And it's mainly, you can do textiles, you can do two-dimensional. You could, if your artwork is also like architectural or land, you can actually build structure on their property. So it was really good to think about going and doing something like that. And for myself, who was like, okay, I've been doing a lot of work by myself, and now I have a chance to be with other artists, I would say that I was so excited about it. And being able to have time and space to spread out was huge, because I was in this like basement situation, making things that were too big to really be there, and then having that space and the time to think about it. So I always tell other artists when they're thinking about going to residencies, it's really good to give yourself the time to plan it out, and give yourself the time to schedule that kind of opportunity for yourself. Really plan out your timing. So iPark is a fully funded residency, so they are also very competitive in the fact that they usually close for the winter because it's not a heated situation. So their last residency is usually like November or December, depending on the weather. But it was a great experience, and I hope that you all, if you have questions, I can actually answer more questions about that. But I also wanted to mention one little thing about Kevin's list, because I also had another residency this past summer, but it kind of fell through, but it kind of happened with all the things changing in funding. It was in Costa Rica, and it was at the Mauser Foundation. Really beautiful space, but it was going there with all of the stuff happening, funding changed. So I couldn't do that one, but I had a grant. So I created my own situation in an artist, an artist, how can I want to call it a village, but I don't think that's proper, in Pawtucket, a building where there's lots of artists. And I think it's very important to kind of create your own opportunity as well. So I want to just stop there because I can see that there might be more questions, and I want to open that up. Okay.
I did want to ask you though, Karen, how this impacted your work though. You know, one thing you talked about was more just the space and having the space and spreading out. But what about the development of the work conceptually, personally, you know, and what it and why that mattered to you?
Well, because I think when you have time and space like that, you're able to dive a little deeper into the things that you think about on the edge. You're able to go a little deeper. So for me, after doing iPark, it opened up an opportunity to have a lot more exhibitions, especially locally in Providence. And then of course it opened up being able to be in a competitive situation with a national international residency accepting my application. So my practice has to do with banana leaves. So the reason why Costa Rica meant a lot was I was going to their banana fields to do research. So it really deepened the way I was thinking about art, and it also deepened the way that I was thinking about how things I produce can affect other people. So um, I would say it was just a really great experience, and because my day job is working with artists, and also my other jobs too is sitting on boards or working with artists as well. It was important to kind of know what it was like to be able to express myself in my own job. And you know, if I'm being somebody that's advocating for an artist, I really know what it means to do that. So.
No, thank you so much, Karen. And for all of those attending, please pose your questions in the Q&A so that we can ask our panelists. I do want to ask, as we're waiting for some questions, I wanted to ask all of you, one of the things that came up, and I think, Noel, you kind of, it triggered this for me when you talked about the scale and the equipment that you provide, or sometimes might not have available, like glass, you know, integrating glass. For all of you, what do people sometimes bring? Do they bring a lot of their own equipment? Do they rely on the equipment there? And then, of course, you know, Carolina, you even noted just getting there into a residency sometimes is an effort, but do people, when they bring equipment, have to ship it there? And then I know people have talked about creating work in a residency and not being able to afford to ship it back to themselves sometimes. And so maybe if you could touch base on some of those questions would be helpful.
When you show up for a residency at the carving studio, I'm expecting you to bring nothing when it comes to tooling. If you have a set of chisels that you like in particular, or a particular brand of diamond wheel, you're more than welcome to bring whatever tooling you'd like, but we will provide everything. If you need to drill a 4-foot hole, we'll figure it out together. So that's the general tooling. We do provide housing for folks. People get stipends for food. I will say, unique to us because we are in rural Vermont, in a little tiny town. I can't recommend bringing a car highly enough. Like some of our undergrad interns over the summer, one of them had a car, the other ones were riding around on bikes all summer. They got really fit because they spent a lot of time on bikes. So that would be definitely one of the considerations. I know Carolina deals with a lot of like rural residencies, so I imagine that's for example, a dynamic there. But I would think really hard about the fact that you're going to a rural area. You're going to be working outside most of the time, at least again, unique to us. So think about how you're packing. Like, there's like all these kind of details. Like, you should assume that there are mosquitoes at night and that we have poison ivy and like things like that. Now that's not to say that like you're going camping for a month if you were to come be a resident here, but there's just an element of you need to think through that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, in terms of tooling, we provide everything. That's one of the really kind of, I think, interesting and unique things about the carving studio is that we have the tooling to basically take on anything in stone.
That,
Um, so
that's
I'll let the others answer.
really cool and really amazing. Carolina and MJ and also Karen, any thoughts about bringing stuff, things that you need, what you provide, shipping work back and forth, things like that?
I think The Steelyard also has a really unique kind of model where, again, the residents share the studios with our educational program. So they're in the educational studios using all the equipment there. I think what's really special about a residency like the Steelyard is that residents don't have to be responsible for bringing their own equipment. Residents are generally responsible for bringing materials or purchasing materials. So if that's clay or mild steel or anything like that, they're kind of generally responsible. We have some of that available, but because the Steelyard is both an educational and a like residency studio, our materials on site tend to be in flux depending on what classes need and what different instructors need. But yeah, we don't ask residents to bring any equipment, and I think that is great because then residents can really focus on just making their work, and they don't necessarily have to worry about like shipping things to us, shipping things out, especially because many of our residents end up making like really large, like larger than life-sized works. Many of our residents end up donating or getting their work commissioned to become like public art projects. So they end up going to parks and other like places in the area and become permanent installations. I think the other thing that's really interesting about what the Steelyard does is that because our year-long program isn't it's not, we don't provide housing. Residents end up moving to Providence if they're not already from the area. And because Providence is the size that it is, anybody moving to Providence to join the arts community has like a pretty felt impact on the local community. And so a lot of the people who come to do our residency, if they're not coming from Providence itself, they're coming to move to Providence and end up staying in Providence and become arts educators at other places. And so it's less of a question of how do they get their work from our residency to like wherever they're going next. And it's more so like how do they become part of the Providence arts community. And I think it's really interesting because I came to Providence to do a residency at the Bench Press Core Archive Work print studio, which is right down the street. And so I think the Steelyard is a similar type of model where we're bringing people to come and be part of Providence.
Which is super fabulous. Now, thank you, MJ. And Carolina or Karen, anything else to add?
Would you like me to go first? Okay.
Sure, you can go first.
Yeah, I think for me, because I do watercolor painting and oil painting, and it's two-dimensional. For my residency, I had to bring everything. My studio was at iPark was about the size about 12 by 16, and it was just empty with a sink. And they provided tables and easels, and I had to bring all my supplies. And I mean, it's close enough to Hartford and other places, and they did have shopping trips where they would take us to different places to buy supplies if we needed it. But it was either like shipped in, mailing, or bringing everything you have. So it's really good to plan out what you need because you won't be able to get it for 3 days or 3 or 4 days. So. And just to mention, because that kind of residency also had music and it also had writers. So there was a place for a musician there was a piano and some instruments and also it also has film. So there was a projector and different things for film as well. So.
Yeah, I would say in contrast to these two residencies, our space does not have as much equipment or sort of large spaces, but what we offer is that the print studio and the looms, and then everything else we're sort of expecting the artists to provide, except for some basic tools that we have and leftover supplies that artists kind of leave behind in a supply closet. And we are in a rural area, so it is, like Noel was saying, quite difficult to get to North Adams. And also there's not a super convenient art store, but we do take artists on field trips to an art store pretty close by. And what I've seen, which is actually pretty interesting, is like, people are there for the overall experience. And so it's the cohort, it's the museum, it is the studio, but what I've seen a lot, especially recently, is instead of coming with a really particular idea of like, oh, I'm going to bring all these canvases with me or all this material, is that people have been experimenting a lot more. Like, oh, I've been really wanting to focus on this. I'm going to do a lot of sketches and like material studies more so than a finished piece. And I think it also kind of challenges people's practice in that way, where it gives them a constraint. Like, you can't have everything you usually have in your studio. It needs to be maybe something that you can ship or maybe even leave behind, depending. So it's either if people need, yeah, to kind of budget to send back their finished project and their materials, or they kind of take that chance to do research and investigations or material studies.
Great. One of the things that this really highlights, from each of you is, and it goes back to everything we said, really do your research into what you want from the residency, including issues, again, of equipment or changing up and working in different materials that you don't expect. And in fact, we have a couple questions, and one of the questions here is it unlikely for someone who is in a major that doesn't match the major in the residency to get in? What if I'm interested in the sculpture residency, but I major in something else? And I have a feeling I know what some of the answers might be, but what are some insights on that? Because I do think sometimes someone's like, well, I'm actually a graphic designer, but I really would love to go to the carving studio and work three-dimensionally. How would that be perceived? So what are your feelings about that question?
I can jump
Being
in on
of a
that.
different discipline.
I would say I would actually prefer that you not be in the major of whatever it is that you're applying to do. That's not entirely true, but there are a bunch of people that come in. It's like, oh, I've been doing it this way for 5 years, and this is how I learned it at RISD. I want you to throw all that out. You're here to learn from, a new set of instructors. You're here to kind of take in a new perspective. If you can do that and that's also your major, then also great. But I really think that one of the benefits, and I actually think that the two other panelists up here, their organizations do it really well too, is bringing in different instructors and bringing in new people and having multitudes of different experiences come teach. It's about absorbing all that. So I would not look negatively on a different major at all. And if you've got an interesting body of work and you're really interested in throwing yourself at the material, come join us.
Great. Thank you. Other insights on that question? Carolina, MJ?
I'll jump in just because the Steelyard is very medium specific and equipment specific, because our residency program is divided between the ceramics and the metals areas. I generally look for residents and applicants who have experience in the medium that they are applying for. And like I said before, there's a lot of opportunity for residents once they're in the program to do cross-pollination. We do a lot of like different informal skill shares between all the different residents who have various skills. And residents also get special types of access to our educational programming in all the various mediums. But because our residency program is structured for such a long time and is pretty independently led, we look for people who have at least some experience in the material that they're applying for. Not to say that the people who come through our residency program end up only working in the medium that they've applied for. We had a jewelry resident this past year, Anne, who's a RISD grad, who applied as a jeweler and then ended up making these like amazing, like huge welded architectural structures, and also like these really intricately like hand bent wooden and paper kites. So like people will kind of expand from like where they start from their application, but we do look for people who are at least going to be able to access some part of the studio that they've applied for without any like additional training.
Great, thank you, MJ. There is another question. How would you develop a project proposal for an artist residency? How do you know exactly what you want to do? And I know that's a pretty wide open question, but thoughts and feedback on that. I think part of it might be generated out of the thought that some residencies require that you come in with a proposal, where I know some residencies don't require that at all. So I wanted to note that too.
Yeah, I would say at the studios, we do ask for residency goals, just to get a sense that the artist has some, some plan, some idea, and also just get a feel for a project or concept that they're looking to explore and kind of better understand what it would be like for this artist to be in residence. But we in no way ever keep the artists accountable for that in the way of like, this is what you applied with, and this is what you need to work on while here. And there are residencies like that that are very project based, and then there are ones that are more open-ended and are self-directed, and you're really just getting the space and time to make. It was, the residency liked your work and they trust that you are going to come and make something awesome. Maybe it's not exactly what was in the application, at least that's how the studios is run. So I do think that it is very dependent on one proposal is not going to be the same if you're applying to multiple residencies. And that's sort of the biggest advice that I would give to folks applying it's not a one size fits all. Oh, I drafted a proposal, I'm going to send it off. Because obviously what the Steelyard is offering versus what the studio is offering, you might have completely different ideas, and it might even be based on what's being offered there, but also the location. Like the location might be really informative to the project. So it's pretty broad answer.
Yeah.
But a very good answer. So,
Yeah, I agree with Carolina because that is definitely, you do come, a lot of residencies, they are definitely open to you. At least the one that I've experienced, they're open to your own projects. And I think a lot of residency likes, like even, it's just even the carving studio thinking about like experimenting with what you're doing and finding your way through your own practice to actually make something new that you haven't done before. I think that was my experience at iPark. It was kind of like just going and then dumping for the first 2 weeks. And when I went back, I had more of an idea of something I wanted to do a little bit more focused.
I'll only jump in to say that when you apply for a residency at the carving studio, the key thing that I am looking for is not, are you going to make the coolest piece or the most ambitious piece? I want to make sure that that residency is best served going to you rather than the other people that have applied to it. So when I look at a project proposal, it's not so much how well thought out is this project proposal, but it's rather, has this person actually thought through this? Have they kind of, do they realize what they're getting into even? Because stone, at least, is something that just takes forever to work. Um, so, like for example, I'll go back to Taylor Baldwin, the RISD professor who came with us. He spent his first week out of his month just taking a class. And he did some experimentation. He learned how to use the tools. It was like a 101 level class. And then he dove into his project. And that was a perfectly valid way of approaching the residency. So that's, and again, like Carolina said, it is going to be very tailored to the organization. Some people are going to be looking for something specific. We are not. So just, I would say look into that in advance.
yep. So let's take we have one more question, and it actually is a perfect question to close this workshop on. Do you have advice in the application process? The classic question. And Karen mentioned networking, and I'm curious, do you recommend speaking more in depth with somebody involved with running the residency before knowing if you should apply or not? So there's actually two questions there, but definitely any advice any of you can give on the application process is always appreciated. And then this question, I think it really harkens to research. Should you reach out to Noel or Carolina and talk about the residency before you apply? So those are the two final questions. Okay. Thought.
I'll jump back in. In terms of, yes, you should reach out to whoever is at the organization. You should talk to everybody at the organization, talk to every single employee that you can talk to past artists, talk to current interns, talk to everybody. It's the best way to give you an idea of what you're actually signing up for. I mean, the promotional materials that the three of us or anybody else is going to present to you, they're exactly that. They're promotional materials, right? And so, if there's a weird nuance in the metal shop and it's hard to work in or anything like that, like there people who work there, people who have been there in the past are going to know that better than anybody. Don't feel like you need to be ultra unique. There's a lot of people who feel like they need to be the most unique application. I would rather understand that you take yourself seriously as an artist and as sort of a professional, so that again, the integrator or the residency is going to the person sort of it's best served for. But yes, talk to everybody. Can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and I would say to thank you, Noel, that Carolina's Piney Woods Atlas is doing exactly this, is to give you that perspective on a more firsthand, peer-to-peer, friend-to-friend approach, which is really, really great. So Carolina, the other thoughts on the Mass MoCA application, and MJ also for the Steelyard?
Sure. I have advice on the application process. I mean, it's really nice that ours is free. So it's like the best advice I can also give is to just apply. And generally we don't change the questions. I mean, there might be some small tweaks here and there. So ours, I forgot to mention that is open for 2 months. And again, it is free. So people will have a good amount of time to read through the application questions. I highly, highly, highly recommend applying in advance because I get so many emails from people having technical issues who are applying the last day, and we don't extend the deadline just because of how many applications we receive, and to be fair to all those people who have already applied, and to be considerate of the capacity of our jurors and our staff. We can't, and it feels really hard to tell people no, but so that's why, like Kevin said, put it in your calendar like a week before the actual deadline so that it gets done and you don't have to worry about technical issues. And I guess maybe some of my advice too would be that sort of this like academic sort of language that I feel like people learn in college to use to describe their art. Sometimes it's hard for jurors to read through all that. So just be authentic, be genuine, be yourself, be concise. The longer it is in sort of like the way that things are being described, jurors may not have that much time to spend on each thing. So yeah, just keeping that in mind. And then I do also recommend emailing, or if there's a phone number, definitely calling residencies. If you can find basic information on the website, I don't recommend emailing or calling with something that's very visible and on the website. But if people have specific questions, of course, get in contact. And then what I've done in the past was like, if I didn't know a friend who had gone to that residency, this may be strange, but I would see their past artists, and I have honestly emailed people before that I would see who have gone like, hey, how was that experience for you? Just, so you can get that first experience from someone who'd gone there.
Great. And MJ?
Yeah, I guess to talk more about our application process, or our application like review process, we have a rotating group of jurors every single year. And so every year I invite artists who are working in the industrial crafts, as well as like local art administration people, local community members in Providence who are involved in the various arts orgs here to review applications. And so I would advise, I guess, like to emphasize what Kevin said at the beginning, like when you apply for a residency, like you get so many rejections. People apply for residencies you'll get hundreds of applications for like two spaces. And so I think for the Steelyards application, if you don't get your first try, like keep applying, because there are new jurors every single year. The thing that we look for on our applications, and that like the jurors are kind of instructed to look for when they're evaluating applications, is not necessarily for like a really fleshed out project or somebody who's even like an expert in the medium that they're trying to work with, but just somebody who has familiarity, who has like a clear artistic voice, a clear intention with what they want to do with the mediums that they're interested in working with. I have artists who apply who are like, I have a series of exhibitions that I'm trying to make happen in the next year, and these are the types of things I want to make. But then I also have artists who are like, I've been working with clay, and this is kind of like the meaning I get out of working with clay, and the work that they present shows a really clear kind of like artistic and aesthetic voice that is exciting for us. The other thing to consider when it comes to cohort-based residencies, when you're doing your research, is that part of the selection process is making sure you select a cohort that fits together. So sometimes in the application process, kind of the unseen evaluation criteria is who else applies. For me, that means that I try to get people who have a variety of types of practices so that not one part of our studio is taking on too much strain because everybody wants to weld or everybody wants to throw on the wheel. But also so that the residents get a variety of perspectives from each other. People work together in the studios year round as the people who have 24/7 access. Like, they are on top of each other always, and they learn from each other, and they get in each other's way. And so a lot of the process of selecting a cohort per year also depends on like who are the other people applying. So when you're getting acceptances and rejections, just remember that like it's not just about like how good of an artist you are or even how good your application is, but it's also this process of selecting a group of people that will mesh well together in the Steelyards space. I've had this job for a little over a year, and I was doing the back end of our application process last year at the same time as I was getting application rejections and acceptances of my own. So it's kind of an interesting perspective to have on the application process. But yeah, just yeah, keep trying to do it.
MJ, that is truly a fascinating process to be juggling both at the same time. Very existential there. Thank you so much. And then Karen, rounding it all out, any advice and tips on applying?
Yeah, just everybody has said it, especially what MJ has said about like the rejection is part of it. So after my other residency, I was making it my practice to at least apply to a minimum of 3 places per year. And it took like 5 years between one to the next. And there was a lot of rejections, and it's just that if it doesn't fit or the timing and the cohort, it's an important piece that, residents have to actually put together this group of people that can get along or work together or can help each other, so it is like choosing a class in a college. So um, and also too, I just want to mention, because since Kevin and I do work at RISD in the Career Center, we do offer help with advising to prepare you for those kinds of applications, and also to show you some of the resources if it was too quick just to talk about it with you. So please use our services.
What a perfect note to end on, Karen. And very, very true. So this is again a great ending point. Tremendous thanks to Carolina, MJ, Noel, and Karen tonight for giving up their time to talk about this residency experiences, their incredible residency programs. And then also, I really hope all of you leave tonight, and when you watch this recording in the coming year, just have a better insight on, I don't know, I almost feel a more personal approach. Because sometimes when you're applying to things, it feels very institutional and in this organization, but you have these wonderful people behind these organizations who care so much about you as a creative, and care about the people that are supporting in these residencies. And that's a really important factor in all of this. So thank you all for your generosity. And again, all those attending and who see the recording, I hope this really benefits you and gets you better prepared to apply for residencies. And good luck through this process. So thank you all tonight. Bye, everyone. Thanks again.